Welcome to this episode of Inside PTI. Hey, today we're going to talk about some narrow row corn, but we're doing some things a little different with it than traditional 20-inch row corn. We're implementing what's called a solar corn corridor. And you know, as we started looking at 20-inch rows and evaluating the whole system compared to the status quo of 30s, I thought, you know, sunlight interception, harvesting sunlight is important for maximizing corn production. I said, what if we could do something with, you know, making a corridor or a wide row within the narrow row 20-inch row system. So this is what I'm referring to as solar corridor corn, 20-inch rows, twin 20s, and then we shut a row off and leave a gap. So 2 rows of 20s, we leave a gap, 2 rows of 20s all the way alternating throughout the field. And you see that wide row, that's a 40-inch row is what that is, but that's allowing more sunlight to drive through and let that whole plant receive sunlight. Now, we've done some work with strip cropping to increase sunlight. We've seen some nice yield increases there on corn, but we're wondering if this type of a system can't maybe do the same thing, as well as some other agronomic benefits too that we'll get into here today. So advantages of this system, mainly sunlight interception, but I also kind of wonder, is this going to give me the ability to seed cover crops? Could I put a cover crop in this wide row, you know, and especially with the various types of cover crop seeding we're doing now, we can get in the crop to seed it, and will that give me a long enough growing season to take full benefit of that cover crop? It's one of the things we're trying to do. Then, you know, if I'm utilizing a longer growing season, could I use it for grazing abilities if I'm a livestock producer? So that's some of the advantages that could come along with this type of system. So, you know, as we were harvesting this corn last fall, I thought, why don't we just take a break from the combine? And I wanted to go out into the field and kind of show you what we're talking about with our solar corn corridor. Take a look. Okay, here we are again in 20-inch rows, and I guess we're just trying to look at everything we can with this type of system and see what some differences are in yield potential. And one of the things that I wanted to try was kind of shifting from this 20-inch row width to playing around with what I call the solar corridor. And so this is where we're basically leaving a gap, we're leaving a 40-inch row. I call it twin 20s. You've got 2 20-inch rows, and then you're missing a row. We've got a gap, we just shut the row off right here. And then we run 2 more 20s, and then we run a single row gap, okay? And then we go 2 more 20s, we leave a gap, 2 more 20s, so on and so forth. And so I want to get into one of these corridors, if you will. Again, we're just missing 1 row here. And one of the things that we wanted to look at this for was, you know, we've done some strip planting, trying to see if we can encourage more sunlight into these solar corridors to enhance yield. You know, you've seen it with ears that are on the edges of fields, and just some beautiful ears out here on the edges. And you get inside and say, well, maybe they don't look so good. So one of the things that we're doing is just skipping a row here, leaving a solar corridor, and then we're adjusting populations. We're running, in this particular trial we're looking at today, low populations of 32,000 seeds per acre, and then we ramp it all the way up to 44,000 seeds per acre. And we'll see if we can take advantage of yield by getting some sunlight here, extra sunlight, and trying to grow some yield potential here. So some of the disadvantages with this would be potentially weed control. Again, letting more sunlight hit the ground. We might be able to get weeds coming through here. I worry about drouthiness because, again, we're burning moisture in right here, and potentially losing water that the crop could use. One advantage I see with this, other than just the sunlight interception, is what if we could come in and do a cover crop in this solar corridor? Maybe it's less competition for this corn crop. Maybe we could put a cover crop in here and have something established at harvest time, and again, start talking about soil health. Okay, and so that's one of the things that we want to look at too. Another major advantage with this is seed cost. One of the things we found out last year was that we did lose a little bit of yield by going to this solar corridor compared to a typical 20-inch row system.
However, we had, a third of our seed cost was eliminated, and this system actually outperformed economically a standard 20-inch row system by almost $10 an acre. So that was at one seeding rate though, just one population. I wanted to start with that and then kind of climb from there. So now we've got different populations, different seeding rates this year. We'll put the seed cost to it and we'll find out what's going on. But kind of interesting with these solar corridors. I want to do some more work with this, and it could be pretty interesting as we go forward. But we're going to get the combine in, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at yield, and we'll see what we got.
All right, so you're probably wondering, what the yield was of this solar corridor corn. How did it compare? Well, let's go back to 2019 because we've got multiple years of yield data here. In 2019, my solar corridor actually lost 9.7 bushel to the acre. And I was kind of disappointed in that. I thought, wow, that corn looked better than that. I was kind of hoping it would kind of be right with it, kind of hang closer than this 9.7 bushel loss. But when I took the economics into consideration here in the lower seed cost, remember, I'm shutting these rows off, and so I'm not paying for seed in those rows. We actually made almost $6 an acre with this system. And again, we're not looking at any of the cover crops or the grazing of livestock, those additional benefits. It's just corn yield. But that was 19. We did it again in 20. That's the video you saw just a little bit ago. And we looked at multiple populations or seeding rates. Now in 19, I just looked at a 36,000 static population. But this year we looked at 32,000 seeding rates all the way up to 44,000 in these 20-inch rows. And it varied. I lost yield at every seeding rate, but as I got to the higher seeding rates, like 40 and 44,000, the yield started to get a little bit closer. We look at the economics of this, and I actually made money with this system to the tune of almost $25 the acre at populations of 44,000. Come down a little bit to 40,000, which I think is a pretty typical 20-inch row seeding rate. I was within $4 of a traditional 20-inch row system. Now, again, we bring the cover crops into this and the grazing potential, this would be dollars that you'd have to add on to it. So again, only 2 years of data here, but I'm optimistic on what I'm seeing so far. It is a different approach to growing narrow row corn, but it's interesting nonetheless. So today's Inside PTI agronomy tip of the day is, one of the basic principles of growing corn is maximizing sunlight. If that's true, which it is, can we use a solar corn corridor to contribute to higher corn yields? Our PTI, farm data proved in 19 and 20 that we did see some overall economic gains by utilizing this type of system, anywhere from $6 to $25 the acre net profit. And remember, everything we discussed today just focused on corn yield. I really think as we look at a systems approach, implementing this type of a program, it needs to involve these cover crops. And if you're a livestock producer where you can graze that cover crop potentially after harvest, this would be some pretty large gains and really something to think about. If you have any questions on anything we've talked about today, you can go to our website and find the closest Premier dealer, Precision Planting Premier dealer closest to you, or you can send us an email at InsidePTI@precisionplanting.com. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of Inside PTI.